Do you ever listen to the evening news? What's on the evening news? Well, murders and wrecks and fires and tragedies. And I talked to a guy who's an anchor about that, and he said, well, that's what people want to hear. He said, if we put other stuff on, they don't listen. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'd love to listen to an evening news report that had something besides the police blotter on it, you know. But they do have a lot of bad news and not so much good news. Sometimes we're that way about the church. We hear the bad stuff and about people who've not done well or have left the church, or churches who are having trouble. And we don't maybe focus on the good news about the church, and that's what I've been asked to do in this session. I put out a monthly newsletter called Good News. And there's two things I want you to do with the cards that you've been given. One is, if you do not now receive the Good News newsletter, and I'd like for you to put your email address on there, on the card, and we'll send it to you. Just send it out once a month, 2 or 3 stories, 4 stories about good things happening in the church. And some of the things I'll be talking about today have been stories in the Good News newsletter. Also, on that card, want you, if you know of a good news story that you think would be good for me to report on, why, put enough information on that card that I can follow up on that. You've had something really good happen at your church, or your mission work, or whatever. Why, give me your email address and tell me maybe a line or two about that, and I'll contact you, and we'll use that for a story in Good News. That newsletter goes out to a potential probably 40 or 50,000 email addresses. I don't suppose all of them open it and read it, but it has the potential to reach a lot of people. So we want to spread the good news. And so I want you to help us to do that. Now, we're going to talk about several things that I believe are good news. First, about membership. According to the Directory of Churches of Christ put out by 21st Century Christian, from 2000 to 2012, Churches of Christ lost about 5% in membership. That's not the good news. The good news is that from 2012 to 2013, it stayed even. So it didn't keep going down. It's not turning up yet. We want to work for that. But at least during that year, it didn't go down anymore, and we hope that is good news. And maybe if we all find ways to reach out more, why, we'll turn that around. We hear about churches who are changing their doctrinal stance on such things as women preaching and instrumental music and other things of that sort. That's bad news. But the good news is that of almost 13,000 congregations of Churches of Christ, something like 50 have made those changes. They get lots of publicity, but it's not a very large number. And those who have done that, most of them have declined in membership. They say they're doing it to try to reach out to more people, and the result is that they decline in membership. Well, we need to be teaching and preaching and helping people to know the truth, and we must keep our guard. And that's a challenge for all of us, but let's keep working on that. Now, here are some other things that are happening that I think are good news. We have a more active inner city work in Churches of Christ than we had for many years. I think that's a very good thing, that we have more of our members doing inner city work. There was just last week a meeting in Little Rock of urban ministries around Churches of Christ. Next year, that meeting will be here in Oklahoma City. And there are more than 20 different cities in the United States where they have these inner city works. There's one in Tulsa and Houston and Fort Worth and Little Rock and all around where these inner city works are going on. And so that's a trend that's developing among us that's very good. I want to tell you about our work in Oklahoma City as an example of these inner city works, to show you something of what they're doing and why this is really good news. In Oklahoma City, we have the Capitol Hill Church of Christ, and for the last 10 years, that church has met. It meets at 27th and Robinson, South 27th and Robinson. So that's about 27 blocks south of the center of the city. And they have met for 10 years in a former funeral home that was purchased. I don't know whether to share this with you or not, but the kitchen is the former room for embalming. And I don't know, I don't think they publicize that a lot, and they've taken the sign off the door. But anyway, they've made good use of that. It has an auditorium in it where in the funeral home they had funerals, and their rooms they use for classes and things like that. So it serves them in some good ways. They meet each Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock for worship with about 135, 150 people. And then they have Bible classes for children and for adults. They meet again on Thursday night for their midweek service, at which they have Bible classes and have a meal after that. So on Sunday night and on Thursday night they have meals. About half of the people come from Spanish-speaking families. It's kind of interesting because the children, of course, are growing up learning English, but the parents and the older ones still need service in Spanish, so they have services in Spanish and English, a bilingual service. And the preacher translates himself. Pancho Javes, he'll say it in English, then he'll say it in Spanish. You say it in English. It must take an interesting turn of mind to be able to do that, to translate yourself, but he does. And at the Lord's table, and they sing songs in both languages. They talked to the Spanish people about that and said, "Would you rather have your own service?" They said, "No, we want to be with everybody else." I thought that was kind of an interesting response, wasn't it? So it's about half Spanish, about a fourth African American, a fourth Caucasian. So it's an interesting mix, which would be true in any inner city work probably. They have some baptisms. I was down there about 2 weeks ago, and they had 4 baptisms that day. Now let's see, 4 times 52 would be, I don't think it works that way. They don't have 4 baptisms every Sunday. But they do teach some people and bring people to Christ, and so that's good. And so through the year they have some who are baptized into Christ. On Thursday night they have a medical clinic, and they may have as many as 50 whom they treat. They have doctors and nurses and pharmacists and translators who come. And Pancho, the preacher, will kind of work that line and talk to people and maybe get acquainted and find some that he wants to follow up with and maybe have a Bible study with. And so they really have a good focus. They've learned this about the benevolence work they do. The food and the clothing and the furniture they provide and the medical clinic. They try to focus on to do more things for a smaller number rather than to do lots of things for a broader number. Because they find out if the people who come to the medical clinic and are the same as the people who are getting the food and the clothing, they have an opportunity to make a stronger impact on those people and more likely to get them to come to church. So that's a kind of an interesting thing they've learned about doing their work in the inner city. During the summer months, they have about 10 interns who come, and they do tutoring and they do vacation Bible school, and they participate in LTC, and they do a lot of good things with that training, and so it's a good work. The Memorial Road Church oversees that, but other churches help with it as well. So the fact that we have more places, more cities where churches of Christ are doing inner city work, I believe is good news. That's good news. Okay, let's move to another one. Disaster relief. We've become more active, I believe, in disaster relief. The Church of Christ Disaster Relief effort in Nashville has done a lot of good things. They gave out in 2013. They gave out almost $7 million, which was raised among churches of Christ for them to distribute, and about $1 million of that was spent in Oklahoma with the tornado disasters and all that we had here. But that's a pretty good sum of money that they've collected and gone places with. Then there's the Disaster Assistance Churches of Christ from Lake Jackson, Texas. And they are another group that helps with disasters throughout the United States. In 2013, they helped with disasters in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and West Texas, and Evan, Colorado, and Moore, Oklahoma. In Moore, they gave out 67,000 meals, operating out of the Central Church in Moore. 67,000 meals, and other supplies as well. These two groups are working in, and some others, to help in the Philippines, where there was a terrible disaster, as you know, with the typhoon Yolanda. And so they have, they're helping with that. And these groups are working together. And Salvador Carriaga, who's an OC grad and a missionary to Arapal in the Philippines, wrote this about that disaster relief. This little church started with a few dozen members. Now we're having over 600 in our Sunday morning worship, and 10 have accepted Christ. Oh, what a wonderful day. Talking about this one specific Sunday. And there's a landowner who's been so impressed with that he's going to donate property, prime property, on a national highway for them to build a building on. And he says, something special is happening that I've never seen before. Praise the Lord. So the disaster relief is doing what Jesus said, to love your neighbor and to help people. But as it is with lots of commands that the Lord gives us, there are good things that flow when you do that. And so that's been a good thing. Following the tornado in Moore, I was pretty amazed at how many churches of Christ around the country sent money to churches here to help with that disaster relief. I don't know the total amount that has been received, but I know that the Central Church in Moore and Memorial Church of Christ, I happen to know their numbers, and they have received, without any solicitation, over $4 million to be distributed to people to help with these tornadoes in Moore and Shawnee and, a whole strip of that were damaged. But that's a tremendous outpouring, And these churches have worked really, really hard at making the best use of that. And because of that, there's some people coming to church, and some have been reached. The church of Shawnee says they baptized 6 people from those who have been helped. So we have improved in our use of disaster relief, and I think that's been very good news. Now here is that's a picture of the Philippines distributing food, and here's the Moore tornado. You know about that. Now, another of the things is that we have been doing more to train local people to do the preaching in those localities rather than bringing them to the United States to train them and expecting them to go back. Often that hasn't worked too well, as you know. Sometimes it's worked well. But we're doing much more to train preachers in their own locality. And I believe that's a good thing that we're doing, some good news. The Bear Valley Bible Institute of Denver has preacher training programs in Cambodia, Cameroon, 2 in Ghana, Guatemala, 2 in India, 1 in Kenya, Nepal, Nigeria, Paraguay, 2 in Tanzania, 1 in Togo, Uganda, and Ukraine. That's just the Bear Valley Bible Institute. Here are some pictures of those. Here's one in Cambodia. Here's one in India, Tanzania. Here's one in Nepal. So they're training people in their own locality, sometimes through those who are there. Sometimes they send someone from here to help with the training. The Baxter Institute in Honduras has a 4-year program, and they have about 70 students at a time. They've trained over 500 from 16 nations. And the students do weekend evangelism as a part of their training program, and that results in hundreds of baptisms each year. And here's a picture of a class in the Baxter Institute. There is a picture in a Honduras preaching camp. This church at North MacArthur has a summer preaching program, summer camp for young men who are interested in preaching, which is a great thing. I hope you'll utilize that, because that's a very fine thing they do here. And there are probably 10 of those or 15 of those around the country that are very good activities. But they have one in Honduras, and they had about 40 in their camp, and there were three. This is a picture of 3 young men who were baptized while they were there at that camp. There is the Great Commission School in Kenya, which is a very good one. This is the Great Commission School has about 20 branches in Kenya, 20 extension schools throughout Kenya, and people from other nations come as well. That's a very fine program. They do They have an interesting approach in those schools. That's maybe not the case in all of these schools, but maybe in some others. They not only train them in Bible subjects, but they also teach them a trade, maybe computers or tailoring, sewing and making clothing or whatever. They teach them a trade so that they can be self-sufficient, and they can earn their income from this trade, and at the same time, then they can preach and don't have to depend on the United States or somewhere else to support them, which often creates some problems. And so that's an interesting approach they use in the Great Commission School in Kenya. There's a preacher training program in New Zealand and Albania, and I'm sure I'm not listing them all, but the one in Albania, for example, has one for preachers and wives that meets 2 days a week, 30 weeks out of the year. They have 14 of these classes, all taught by Albanian preachers. So that's happening all around the world, and I think that's a very good thing that's going on that we would be glad to see happening. Memorial Road sponsors Mel DeTore Sr., Mel's father, and he works in Brazil training preachers, and he goes from place to place conducting seminars and trains the preachers there in Brazil. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think that's a very good step forward for churches of Christ around the world. Now, here is another thing. That is an increasing work among Spanish-speaking. We have 222 independent Spanish-speaking congregations in the United States with a total membership of 14,489. That's the report in the last Directory of Churches of Christ. There are 315 other congregations with Spanish-speaking services, and that's an increase of about 10% in the last 3 years. We need to do much more in that area because our Spanish population in this country is growing, and we need to be actively finding ways to do that. But that's a very important thing. About 250 from 12 different congregations recently met at Park Plaza in Tulsa to have a fellowship and studies together. The Edmond Church of Christ held its 5th area-wide campaign for Spanish-speaking congregations not long ago. And so there's some good things happening there. Not as much as should be, but some good things. And so I would encourage you and your congregations to do what you can to help encourage work among the Spanish. Now, the next thing I want to mention is the church is growing rapidly in parts of Africa. Many nations in Africa are very receptive to the Word. In Rwanda, about 500 congregations have been established in the last 4 years. That's pretty extensive. That sounds like New Testament spreading, doesn't it? So that's very good. They mobilize local Christians and new Christians to reach out to immediate family and friends. We have about 50 students from Rwanda at Oklahoma Christian, and we are able to reach some of them, and they go back. And so it's Rwanda is a place where we're having good success. Mombasa, Kenya is a very interesting example. This is just a little capsule of what's happening in many places, but it sort of shows what's going on. It started in 1987 by Ken and Pat Beckloff. There was a group of people in Mombasa who had been studying World Bible School. They'd been taking lessons, and so Ken and Pat went there in 1987 and talked to them and studied with them, and they were baptized. And then they began to start a congregation themselves. And then in 1990, 3 years later, Ken and Pat moved to Mombasa to begin giving them more help and helping to spread. They stayed there for a number of years. Now there are 12 congregations in Mombasa and 40 in outlying areas around Mombasa. And so that's been a place where the gospel has developed well and spread well. And they even have an elementary and high school in Mombasa. Now, here's a picture of a church meeting in Mombasa, and they have some very nice church buildings around the city, and so that's a good thing. Here's a picture of the Christian school in Mombasa. So we have good things happening in in India. In Africa. The gospel is spreading in lots of places there, so that's helpful. Churches are growing in India. The work there is very diverse and spread, and it's very hard to get accurate data. There's some say that there are as many as 1 million Christians in India. It's just hard to check on that. I've been to India several years ago and talked to preachers, joined the preachers' wives, and they were very receptive. We had about 200 in one place, and then we'd go travel a day, spend about 4 days with them, and travel a day, and spend 4 days with about 200 in the next place, and travel a day, and about 200 in the next place. I mean, it was amazing. Some of them would ride, on the train for some distance to get there to these study sessions. But it's very the work in India has a lot of good things about it. And here is here's a picture of dead bodies after a destructive flood in India. And as a result of that, we have sent aid there. And so there are people in there. This is Mani, the one baptizing is named Mani Pagadapalli, and he is a preacher there, also a medical doctor. And so after the disaster, he used his skills and his preaching, and he trains other preachers. And so it's been a place where there's been good work done in India. So that's a good thing that's happening in the church. Lots of growth in the church in India. Many young people are going on campaigns. I think that's a good thing. Our young people are service-oriented. They like to do things to serve. That's a part that this oncoming generation has some qualities that may make them harder to reach, but one of the things that's good about them is they like to serve. And if we can go through that serving tendency they have and utilize that, then it pulls them into being more faithful in the church, as well as they're helping people where they go. So congregations often send young people to other parts of the nation and to other countries. During the summer of 2014, for example, Oklahoma Christian will have about 100 students going to about 20 different countries. Many go to Haiti and Honduras, but others to other places as well. Just as a sample, we have 9 who will be doing summer internships in various countries. 6 more will spend 2 years serving in various countries in the HIM program. 9 are going on a summer campaign to Australia. 7 to Tanzania, 7 to Rwanda, 3 to Swaziland, 3 to Germany, 8 to Zambia, 5 to Malawi, 15 to work with the Let's Start Talking program. 20 are going to Honduras. Well, that's just a sample of what's happening in your churches and in lots of places. And so that's very good. The Edmond Church has taken people to Mexico for many, many years. One of the most interesting sights I've ever seen is driving by their parking lot the night before they're leaving and to see 25 rented vans to take all the people going on that campaign. This year they've changed it from Mexico because of the situation there is not too safe, so they're going to McAllen, Texas, and work there. But they think that will be safer on this side of the border. There's another one that's interesting. It's called Rural America Ministries, and that is getting people to go on campaigns here in this country, so that they can work for 2 months in maybe in Oklahoma town, Cordell, for example, or somewhere like that. And so some have been doing that and helping the church in that area, and that's been a good thing. And they can do that at less expense and do lots of good by going on campaigns in this country. Then here is a picture of some on a campaign teaching the Bible. Here's one of my favorite pictures. How do you like that one? That's a student who's on a campaign in Rio de Janeiro where they have this big Jesus statue, up on the hill. It's so impressive. And so she's standing underneath that big statue, and I thought that was an interesting thing. Okay. Church is growing in South America. Just let me give you a quick run through of some things that Bob Young has reported. He's just one person going to several places, but it's a sample. 4 of the evangelists that he has contacted in Honduras recently established 12 new congregations in Honduras. In Panama, Bob conducted a 2-day seminar on unity with 75 from 7 different congregations attending. And then in Venezuela, 8 young evangelists have baptized, almost 100 this year. In Bogota, Colombia, there are 9 congregations. This was just a report from a couple of trips that Bob made. Shows you some good things happening in that area. Let me talk about Partners in Progress for a minute. Partners in Progress is shows you some good things that are happening in Asia. This is called the Ship of Life. That's a pretty impressive ship, isn't it? They go on the... they're supported by the Windsong Church of Christ in North Little Rock and others that help them. And this Ship of Life cruises on the Mekong River in Cambodia. And they just go from place to place along that river. Typically, they treat about 100 patients a day with medical, dental, and pharmaceutical care, primarily with doctors who come from this country to serve for a short time over there. Churches have been planted along the route because people have seen what they do to serve, and that's created some interest. And Christians come from Phnom Penh to work with them with these churches on weekends. So that's been an interesting way to develop interest in Christ by serving in that way. They also have a raft on Lake Tanisap, and there they are helping people. There's a huge lake, and people live all around that lake, and this barge has on it a place where they can conduct services and a way in which they can provide fresh water. And so they're serving people and also having the opportunity to teach them. And they have 6 university students that are doing personal work to reach out with the people that they have contacted. So that's been very good. That lake is home to 30,000 people who live in floating houses around that lake. And so they move around and help them and teach them. So that's been a good thing. Now, let me mention just a couple of other things. There's more useful research going on, I believe. Dudley Chancey and Ron Bruner are doing studies on generational Christians, grandfathers, grandparents, parents, and children, and what's happening. And we're losing a lot of our young people. What could we do to hold more of them, and how could we do a better job of that? And they're studying that and have some reports about how we could do a better job. One thing they've learned is that we sometimes isolate our teenagers too much off by themselves. Give them a youth minister and send them off over here, and they don't have enough contact with the older generation, and that so they need more contact with the rest of the church, and that they've also learned that if the parents don't do a significant amount of the teaching in the home, that they don't stay faithful. I mean, the church can't do it all. The parents have got to be very active in the development of the spiritual development of those young people. The church can help. Being with other young people, being taught at church is a great thing. But the parents need to be involved in the spiritual life of those children. And they need to be in touch with people of older generations. Just a couple of weeks ago at Memorial Road, we had a dinner. We had a lunch at which the elders and their wives came and sat at tables with 5 or 6 of our high school kids and just talked to them and just enjoyed the fellowship. And that was an effort to kind of do what we're talking about, of mixing generations a little bit more. The Oklahoma Christian Church Relations Office is studying the question of why do many members of the church not speak to others about Christ. Why are we so reluctant to do that? Why do we not reach out more? As one put it, we know what we ought to do, we just don't do it. Why is that? What keeps us from doing that, and what would break that barrier? So we're doing some research, and Mel, you have those cards. I'm going to hand out to you now a card and ask you to participate in that research. The questionnaire takes about 5 minutes to do, and maybe one card per couple or something there as you go along. But this is this tells how you can reach that. There's the link by which you can go to that survey. If you've got a cell phone that's got one of those magic things on it, you can use this little box up there. But anyway, we would really appreciate your helping with this and to get your congregation to do it. So far we've had over 700 responses, and we're wanting to get that up over 1,000. And we think that will give us a good cross-section, and we want you to help us with that research. And so go there and take the survey and put this note in your church bulletin and maybe announce about it and get your church to participate in this survey. And then we'll be announcing the results and what we've learned from that so people can get some information maybe from that about how more of our people can be involved. Now, if you want to go to the Good News newsletter, you can take that card I just gave you and write this address on the back of it. And that is www.oc, for Oklahoma Christian, .oc.edu/good news. www.oc.edu/good news. Now, I hope you have given us your email address on the blank card I gave you at the first. And if you have a thought about what might make a good news story that you think we could follow up on, I hope you'll put that on the blank card. And now if you'll pass those blank cards to the aisles, then we'll pick those up And we'll get you on that mailing list, and I think you'll enjoy getting that each month, and would be glad to hear from you about stories that would be a good story to put in that Good News newsletter. Okay, if we picked up all the cards, here's one up here, here's some more up here. Good. Well, the bottom line of all of this is what? Huh? Tell me. There's some good things happening, okay? Some good things happening. Get your chin up, Dayton.
I just thought in regard to the training program, Sunset out of Lubbock.
Yes.
They have over 200 branch or satellite schools.
Right.
Some 7,000 in different parts of the earth taking the courses.
That's great.
That they offer there.
Good.
And most of the ones, of course, aren't preparing to preach.
That's right. Sunset has. I didn't have a list of theirs, but they also have these training places all over the world. So this is, I think that's very good news that we have going. So a lot of good things happening. We're trying to serve Christ. We've got the greatest opportunity to do something good of anybody has ever had, to spread the gospel. What better thing could you do than to share the gospel with somebody? And lots of people are doing it. Some good things are happening. So let's make even more good things happen.